All right, so welcome back to Powers Discussed, where we discuss the powers of the awesome, the great, and also the weird. And today we're going to be talking about Eric Brooks, aka Blade, and he first premiered in Tomb of Dracula number 10 in April of 1973. In terms of powers, he has Damphir physiology, which truly means that he is a hybrid of both vampire and also a human, which affords him with a myriad of different abilities, but also he can fight off some of the vulnerabilities of a vampire. So he has superhuman strength, reflexes, speed, heightened senses, and longevity, for lack of better words. But what's really cool about Blade is that any of the weaknesses that a vampire has, he can fight them off. So in terms of light, solar radiation, anything like that, it doesn't truly affect him in the same capacity that it would affect a vampire. Now, I know we kind of glossed over his powers, but let's go back to it, right? So, in terms of his senses are comparable to Wolverine. Does that mean that it's at the same level as Wolverine? No, but he can discern the difference between a human and also anything that's not a human from a good distance away. And because of his vampire side, he's afforded with superhuman strength that I mentioned before, which allows him to lift almost up to a ton, if not more. And with the vampire side of his physiology, he's afforded with superhuman speed. But the superhuman speed doesn't mean that he's a speedster, but it does mean he supersedes the highest form of an athlete that runs at the fastest capacity. And he also has superhuman reflexes. So when you combine superhuman speed and also reflexes, then you get a character that is seamlessly blurring past you. And also, things are slowed down for him. But let's not forget about superhuman agility, meaning that he can move from point A to point B in relatively a short amount of time. And of course, he does have superhuman stamina, which means that his lactic acid buildup isn't the same as our lactic acid buildup. He has a whole ton less or less lactic acid buildup, meaning that he could do things for a lot longer. And when you combine that with his cardiovascular output, well, he's not utilizing as much oxygen as us, right? Me as a human being. And he could do a lot. So when we're running really fast, we tap into our ATP, right? Adenosine triphosphate. And he's doesn't really tap into that. He's moving and flowing as if this is just a regular day in the park for him. And Blade also has a pretty good regenerative factor. In Civil War, Wolverine stated that his regenerative factor was also on par with Wolverine's. Now, that's debatable, of course. I think we've seen Wolverine do some crazy feats, but we've also seen Wolverine and Blade fight against each other, and we've seen that Wolverine has shoved his adamantium claws through the face of Blade's. And what has Blade been able to do? Well, heal back from it. Now, overall, those are Blade's abilities and powers. Well, powers. Now, if you combine all of those things, now you lead into skills. Now, for him, he's a great, and when I say a great, he's a really skilled and great martial artist, utilizing a sword and also hand to hand combat. So, when we think about his battle IQ or ability to use martial prowesses to overcome enemy, he's up there, right? And I mentioned this before, but he's fought the likes of Wolverine and has pretty much come out alive every single time. It's pretty hard to unalive Blade. Now, even though Blade has a preference for his sword and also hand to hand combat, he does have he has a lot of skill in using weaponry as well. And when I say weaponry, handguns, things of that nature. While Blade doesn't have the weaknesses of a regular vampire, he does have vulnerability towards a red sun. Well, and this is a pretty rare occasion because when you look up into the sky, we see a yellow sun. So there have been certain comic books which depicted a red sun, and that is his weakness. But overall, I would say he pretty much doesn't have a lot of weaknesses. Overall, I'm going to say that Blade is a really amazing character. And every time that I think about Blade, I think about Wesley Snipes. But what's really cool is that we're going to get a new Blade from Lishra Ali. I'm sorry if I butchered that name wrong. But we're going to get a really great depiction of him at the time of this recording. But I have a question for all of you. Can Blade defeat Luke Cage? I'll see you all later for the next one when we're going to be discussing the powers of Luke Cage. Later, everyone.